Welcome, MAC-TV viewers, to this year's edition of Tax Tips with Peggy Riley. Yes, it is that time of year where you're going to be filing your tax returns, and Peggy Riley from the IRS has graciously come for the third year since I've been here and the fourth for her to give you her inside information on how you can best prepare for the tax filing year. So welcome, Peggy. Thank you for coming again.
Thanks for having me.
It's always nice to have you here. I know we received some good feedback last year. Someone mentioned that they really enjoyed the show and thought that it offered some beneficial information. So hopefully this year we can touch on some more things and some of the same stuff, so refresh people's memory.
That's great to hear. I'm glad when people, when it really does help people out.
Yes. So let's get started right away with the first thing is the tax filing season actually began on Friday, January 31st, and this is a little bit later than traditional years or other years, and if you want to explain a little bit about that.
Yes, we started a couple of weeks late because of the government shutdown back in October. Usually in October is when we start updating our systems and updating our tax forms and getting things ready for the next year, getting things tested and all of the computer systems ready to go. So we got behind by a couple of weeks because of the shutdown. So we originally were going to start around the 20th, but we ended up starting on the 31st. But the good news is now we're ready and open and everything's working great and people can get their returns in whenever they want, as long as they have all their information gathered together.
Excellent. And with the later start of the tax season, does that push the deadline, or does that still exist as April 15th?
The deadline is unaffected by the late start to the season, so the deadline's still Tuesday, April 15th. No extra time this year for Patriots Day or anything like that. So it's Tuesday, April 15th is the deadline by midnight.
That's good to know, in case people were wondering. You have to still file by the same date, but it's a little bit of a later start. That gave you some time to wrap your mind around what you're going to do with your tax returns.
Well, that's true. And most people don't have all the documents that they need until the end of January anyway. So now people should be able to file their returns. They should have most of their W-2s and 1099s and all the other information that they need to file that return.
Excellent. And are there any significant changes this year that people should be aware of, or anything that, might affect how they're filing?
There's not a lot of big changes this year. It's pretty much the same. Same credits and deductions are available. There's a few things that are set to expire or have expired now that won't be available for next year, such as making some energy efficient improvements to your home, or the teacher's expense deduction for teachers that pay for their own classroom supplies. But the good news is those things are still available for the return that you're filing now, and Congress still has time to extend them and do it retroactively later.
Excellent. So you touched upon my next question a little bit. If there are anticipated changes within the next year, are there things that people should maybe consider taking advantage of this year that they may not have that opportunity next year?
Well, if you did make some energy efficient improvements to your home, you might not realize, but you may qualify for an energy credit if you haven't already taken it in the past. Some other things that people don't realize sometimes is the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a credit for low-income working individuals and families. Many people don't take that credit that qualify, and it's kind of a moving population. One year, a certain set of people might qualify for that credit. The next year, somebody else might. Your income can be up to about $51,000 with the certain amount of qualified children. So some people think that it's just a credit for low-income people, but many people may qualify, and they should take a look to see if they do.
Now, in terms of credits, I know in years past you've mentioned that if you didn't take advantage of it last year, but it's something that you have done in the past, as long as you have the records of it, can you file that for this year, or is that something that they can retroactively file for?
Well, you could take it if you qualify for it this year. You can take it, but if you think that you may have qualified for it last year and you didn't take it, you can go back and amend that return up to 3 years. So you can go back and amend that return and get a refund, if more of a refund, if it causes more money to come back to you, then you'll be able to claim it. So you would have to amend that last year's return, but if you still qualify, you could take it on this year's return.
Excellent. And then in terms of just an example, the energy efficient one, if they do decide not to extend that one for another year, and people next year say, oh, I didn't take advantage of that credit last year, but I want to, amend a return, just as you mentioned, because it existed in the year that they were supposed to be filing, is that something they can still amend at the time, even though it's
As long as you made the energy efficient improvements in the year that the credit was available, then you'll be able to go back and amend that return. Even if it's not for this year, you don't do it this year,
Right.
you could do it next year. So if that's something that you can take advantage of, that's one of the things that wasn't extended. So if you made some energy efficient improvements to your home, take a look and see if you qualify for that. It can be as simple as putting in some new windows, a storm door, new roofing, solar panels. So it can be little or extensive, but you might qualify for somewhat of a credit on your return.
Excellent. All right. So with the Affordable Care Act now part of the law, is there anything that people should be aware of with their tax returns for this year?
Well, the good news is it doesn't affect your tax return this year, so you don't need to worry about it. Even though it may be on your W-2, there may be a line where it says how much your employer actually paid for your insurance. You don't need to worry about putting it on your return at all. But next year, that will come into play, and we'll be putting a lot of information out about how it affects taxpayers and what they need to do. Right now, the website is up and running, and you can go to the healthcare exchanges and purchase healthcare from them if you don't already have healthcare. So right now, that's what's in play right now, is you can go and purchase healthcare so that you'll be ready when you go to file that return next year. Because just like in Massachusetts, it's going to be very similar, where if you don't have health insurance, then you'll have to pay a fee with your tax return.
So this is sort of something that we've already kind of experienced here in Massachusetts, but there might be people who are contractors who work out of state and live in state, or some circumstance where maybe they haven't had to deal with it, or something that they have to be aware of, that next year it will come into play, and it is a concern that you will need to have some kind of health care.
That's true.
Available.
Here we have a step up against the rest of the country because we've already done it, and we're kind of modeling it after what has happened in Massachusetts here. But people that work here and may not live here permanently may not know that that you have these requirements. So you do have to purchase health insurance, or you will end up paying a fee on that 2014 tax return, your federal tax return.
So there's several methods to file tax returns now, especially with the internet and the accessibility of the internet. I know that online has become a popular method for people to be filing their tax returns, and the IRS has the free file. And if you want to explain a little bit what free file is and how people can get to that.
You're right. E-file has become really the predominant way of people filing returns. More than 80 to 90% of people nationwide actually file their returns electronically now. So Free File that you're talking about is a program that's located on our website, irs.gov, and you click on the Free File logo. It's going to bring up a list of about 14 companies that offer free electronic filing in partnership with the IRS. The key here is you have to go through irs.gov in order to get to their free program. It's going to be companies that you know the names of once you get in there, so you'll be familiar with them, but if you go directly to their website, you're not going to get the free filing. So go to irs.gov, pick which company you want to pick from the free file list, and then it will lead you to their website, and it will actually let you file your return right in the comfort of your home. And it's really great because it leads you through the return line by line. It's going to ask you about credits and deductions that you might not be aware of, just based on some simple information that you input in the beginning. So if you have younger dependents, it may ask about child care expenses. If you have an older dependent, then it may ask about higher education expenses. So it's going to ask you about education credits. It's going to ask you about child and dependent care credits. Even the earned income tax credit, if your income falls below the level, it will ask you a series of questions to determine whether or not you qualify for that credit. So it's a really great program. It leads you right through. It's really easy. Many people are finding that they can file their own return and they don't have to actually pay somebody else to do it. And a real big incentive is you get your money quicker. So if you file electronically and you ask for direct deposit, you get that in about 2 weeks. If you get a paper check mailed to your home, it's about 3 weeks. If you were to file on paper at this time of the year, it could be anywhere from like 6 to 8 weeks. So that's a big incentive.
Yes, it's part of the reason people are so quick to file their taxes. They can't wait to get those returns.
That's true. Many people that are filing right now are expecting refunds, and many of them need that money as quickly as possible to make ends meet. We're having a rough winter here in the Northeast. Those heating bills are pretty high, so they could use that extra money, I'm sure.
I agree. Extra money in your pocket is always nice. And you sort of touched on if people are mailing their returns in, so people can still do the old-fashioned paper, mail it in, do what you need to do if that's what you're comfortable with. Is there a place where people can get the stuff if they prefer to do it that way?
Sure. Well, you can download forms right off our website at irs.gov, so you can just log on and download a paper form and fill it out and mail it in. You can use the electronic programs and get all the way to the end, and if you decide not to e-file, you can print it out, already done for you, and mail it in. Or you can come into one of the IRS offices located throughout the state and pick up some forms. Or we do have a forms line still. You can call 1-800-829-3676, and they'll be able to mail you out a package of forms, whatever forms you'll need to ask for what you need. We no longer mail the big, huge tax package that used to get out at the beginning of January that signaled it's time to file for everybody. So now you're kind of on your own and thinking about between January and April, you got to remember to file that return. But there are many ways to pick it up, and even many libraries still stock some forms. If they don't have the forms themselves, they might have a reproducible book that you can photocopy. So there are still a lot of ways to get a paper return. And we don't mail them here in the Andover any longer, but we mail them to another service center, and the information will be provided right in the instructions.
Awesome. So it's good that if people are comfortable with that, you don't have to change. You can still do what you have always done, but from my experience, I've used the electronic filing and different programs to help me with that, and it really does walk you through step by step and takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, and you can feel a little bit more confident that you can do it on your own.
True. It does the math for you, so you don't have to worry about an addition or subtraction error or leaving off some zeros, or it's going to pop up and say, hey, you're not doing this correctly. But the big key here is that you might not know all the credits and deductions that you might qualify for. Unless you are pretty well versed in taxes, you're probably not going to know everything that might get you that best refund. In this way, if you use the electronic filing programs, it will lead you through and ask you questions and help you get the most money back.
And if people don't feel comfortable doing it on their own and they still feel that they want the support of a tax preparer, what is something that they should look for in a tax preparer? Someone who is really qualified to do it and isn't going to, end up messing up your tax return, because ultimately you are responsible, not the person.
You're right.
So
even if somebody else prepares it for you, once you sign that return, you're saying that everything on there is correct. And you're the one that's ultimately responsible, so if there's an error made or something fraudulently taken, it's your responsibility to pay any tax that might be owed, and then you could have penalties and interest. So you want to make sure whoever you're giving your information to is reputable, is going to do the right thing and not take credits and deductions that you're not entitled to, and make sure that you have your refund directly sent to your bank account or to your address and not to the preparer's address, because you want to make sure that you get all of that refund back. So we always tell people, ask your friends and family. Many people go to the same tax preparer year after year and will be able to recommend somebody. You can make sure that they also have a preparer ID number from the IRS so that they're registered with the IRS as a tax preparer. And you can look for some credentials such as an enrolled agent or a CPA. But there are some other great preparers out there that don't have those credentials, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't go to them. You just want to make sure that they're reputable. They're going to be around after tax time in case you get a dreaded notice from the IRS that you just don't understand. So we see a lot of shops that set up between January and April and then they're gone. You don't want to go to somebody like that in case you need them later during the year.
So really it is in your best interest to do your homework and make sure you research who you're going to be using as a tax preparer, because you really want the confidence to know that they're putting their best knowledge forth and not trying to just get some money out of you in a quick way to take advantage of someone who's confused or concerned about their tax return.
Exactly, and think about it. You're giving them all of your personal information, so you want to make sure that they keep that secure and that you know who they are, and they're not going to take advantage of you by trying to take credits or deductions or anything that you're not entitled to.
All right. Are there any tax credits that people are not typically aware of? I know you mentioned a couple of them, like the earned income tax credit. People may not believe that they, have that to take advantage of. Is there any off the top of your head that you think people might not be utilizing as much as they should?
Well, that really is the biggest one, because we estimate that 4 out of 5 individuals or families actually take the earned income tax credit, and 1 out of 5 gets left behind. And that can be a lot of money. In some cases, it can be up to thousands of dollars in refunds, because it is a refundable credit. So not only does it deduct from any taxes that you owe, it also adds to your refund. And it really is a great program for lower income families to get back on their feet and help them pay some of those hefty bills that they're facing right now. But some of the other things that come to mind maybe are some of the education credits for higher education. If you have students that are going to college, make sure you take a look at the education credits or the tuition and fees deduction. And even after you get out of college, when you're paying back those student loans, that student loan interest is deductible. So some people might not be aware of it. And the child and dependent care credit is for expenses that you pay for your child to be taken care of while you're at work. But what a lot of people don't realize is summer camp expenses qualify for that. You can't be at overnight camp. It has to be day camp so that, it's really meant for so the parent can go to work. But many people don't realize that those expenses qualify for that credit as well. So you want to make sure you hold on to all those receipts when you go to figure out what you might qualify with that credit. And all of this is available on irs.gov.
Perfect. I was just going to ask you that, where you can find a listing of these different, tax credits, where people can really do their own research and try and be prepared to, before you file, as much as it's, you want to do it right away because you want that money. But if you take a little bit of time, you might end up with some more money in your pocket than just filing what you know every year.
Exactly. And if you go to the website, irs.gov, right on the front page, there's a link to credits and deductions. And it goes through ones that are available for individuals, ones that are available for small business people. And you really should take a look at that and just, breeze through it and see what you might qualify for.
Awesome. Now, I know we talked about making sure you hire a reputable tax preparer. Now, what if someone can't afford one? Is there some kind of service out there that's free or volunteer that people who still feel that they, don't want to file their tax return without a little assistance because they're really not confident in it? Is there any place that they can go to get some help?
Well, first of all, the free file program, which is through, their tax preparation software companies that will help you prepare. You're still kind of on your own, but it will lead you through and ask you questions. But we also have volunteers that set up volunteer sites, and they're trained by the IRS. And these volunteer sites are located right in your local communities. So at your local libraries, your community colleges, right out in the local community, they set up sites, and they're trained specifically to help lower income and elderly and non-English speaking taxpayers. So they're trained especially in the credits that would affect those groups of people. And the elderly too, they're not really sure about the computer systems and don't really trust it. So these sites are really great for them. It's people that have been trained, that have been doing it for years, and they're really reputable, and they'll help those people figure out what credits and deductions they qualify for, and then file their return most times electronically for free. Now, to find one of those sites, you can go on our website and type in volunteer sites, and then it's going to ask for your zip code. And it will give you a list of all of the sites within a 5-mile radius of your home. Or you can give us a call at 1-800-829-1040, and we'll be able to give you the list of sites there as well if you don't have access to the computer.
So there really is a lot of resources out there, and it just comes back to being prepared, doing your homework, knowing what you have, and making sure that you're making the best use of the resources that are there. And it seems that time and time again, each year it seems, e-file and electronic filing online has become paramount. And I don't know if you anticipate this. Will there ever be a non-paper return? I
don't think so, because we're always going to have that person that wants to file on paper. And when we first began, I remember years ago when we first began the e-file systems, slowly we kept introducing forms and schedules, because some people have a lot of forms and schedules with their tax return that they need to file. So not everything was available to be filed electronically, but now everything is. And most people are pretty comfortable. People are paying their bills online. They're doing their banking online. So it's like a natural progression to want to file your return online. But I think there's still always going to be that population that just doesn't trust the online filings or the online banking or the online bill paying. So I think that we'll always probably have a paper return, at least right now in the foreseeable future. We have that option. And I've talked to many people, many elderly, that still sit there with paper and pencil and figure it out themselves. But there are a lot of resources out there, like you said, and we really encourage people to take advantage of them.
All right, our last topic. Every year we touch on a little bit of the scams that might be happening, and is there anything new, or what are some of the typical scams that people should be aware of I know we talked about the tax preparers already, but maybe there's other scams that people might not realize, affect their tax filing.
Well, actually, this year we did see some new scams popping up, and it's actually by telephone again. That used to be the way before the emails were being sent out, but we've seen it happen across the country. In Massachusetts, we've seen it happening, and everywhere else, where taxpayers are getting a phone call, and the person saying that they're from the IRS and that the taxpayer owes money and that they need to put money on a green dot prepaid card right away and send it in. Well, IRS just isn't going to call and ask you to put it on a prepaid card, number one. And then these people are also threatening these taxpayers with either taking away their license or with immigration, we're being threatening to be deported or being arrested even. And then if the person doesn't say that they'll send the money in, they have somebody else call back and fake like they're the Registry of Motor Vehicles or the local police department or something, or immigration. This just isn't IRS. We're not going to call you and threaten you and tell you that you need to send in a prepaid debit card to pay off your tax bill. If you owe taxes, you're going to get a letter from the IRS in the old snail mail, so you'll know that you owe IRS money. If you do get one of these calls, you can call us at 1-800-829-1040 and actually check with us to see if we really are looking for you. These callers sound really legitimate. They have some information about the taxpayer that they've gotten through other means. So they do sound kind of legitimate, and there's a lot of noise in the background like they're calling from a call center. So we have seen instances where taxpayers have fallen prey to this over the past few months. So we want to get the word out there that that's just not the way that the IRS operates. We're not going to be calling you and threatening you that we're going to take something away and asking you to send in a prepaid card. You'll know when you owe taxes. And we've also seen the email scams popping up again, usually at tax time, saying that we've refigured your tax, and if you click here and provide all this information, we'll send you a bigger refund. The IRS is not going to correspond like that by email. If we send an email, it's probably in response to an email that the taxpayer has sent to us, maybe asking for some information, but we're not going to put any account or personal information in the email, and we're not going to be asking for that.
Sounds like they're getting pretty advanced with their scams lately. And I mean, I understand it can be intimidating if you get a phone call and someone is telling you all this stuff, and you're likely to believe that maybe they are who they say they are. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is tell them you don't have time for it right now, call back another day or something, and then you follow up and call the IRS yourself, or go on the IRS website and contact you guys directly and say, this is what I've been told. Is this true? And when they call back, you say, nope, I'm not interested. This is not accurate. So your best bet is probably to call yourself, and don't take their phone number to call them back.
Right. And don't be sending out any prepaid cards to anybody, that you don't know who they are. We're just not going to be asking you to do that. If you owe taxes, you're going to know it because you're going to have a notice. Or like you said, you can give us a call just to verify that we are looking for you. And please don't fall prey to those scams.
All right, so I think that wraps it up. Is there anything that you think we missed, or anything you want to touch upon that?
Well, we did give out a lot of information. People's heads may be spinning right now. They can always follow up by looking at our website, irs.gov. We put all the most up-to-date information. Anything you need to know will be right there. If there's any changes that happen during the year, if there's announcements that come out about the Affordable Care Act, the Health Care Act, you want to log on to irs.gov. Or give us a call if you don't have access to a computer, 1-800-829-1040, and we'll be there to give you some assistance.
Excellent. And people should be on the lookout for things for the Affordable Care Act for next year, information about how you guys will be integrating that into a tax return. So
we'll be doing a lot of communicating so people will know what their responsibilities will be.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me again.
And this was the Tax Tips with Peggy Riley for MAC-TV, and we'll see you again next year.